In 1670, this country had more merchant ships than England, France, Portugal, and Spain combined. It wasn't an empire built on conquest. It had no king who dreamed of glory, no army that marched across continents. It was smaller than the state of Maryland. Half of it was underwater. And yet, for about 100 years, this tiny republic controlled more global trade, more gold, and more ships than any nation on Earth. This is the story of how the Dutch Republic became the richest place in the world, and how it almost lost everything trying to keep it. Let's rewind to the late 1500s. The Netherlands wasn't even a country yet. It was a patchwork of provinces, recently at war with the most powerful empire on the planet, Spain. No natural resources to speak of. No gold mines. No fertile empire to tax. Just fishermen, farmers, and a stretch of coastline constantly threatened by flooding. By every rule of history, this region should have stayed a footnote. Instead, the Dutch did something almost no one else in Europe was doing at the time. They turned trade itself into a weapon. While Spain and Portugal were shipping home gold and silver looted from colonies, the Dutch built something different. A machine for moving goods, information, and money faster than anyone else on the planet. In 1602, something happened that had never happened before anywhere in the world. A group of Dutch merchants created the Dutch East India Company, the VOC. This wasn't just a trading company. It was, in effect, the first modern multinational corporation. It could raise money from ordinary citizens through shares. The earliest form of the stock market humanity had ever seen. It could build its own fleets, sign its own treaties, wage its own wars, and govern its own colonies, all without asking permission from the government back home. Think about that for a second. A company run by merchants with the legal power to declare war. Money poured in. Thousands of ordinary Amsterdammers, bakers, widows, craftsmen bought shares, hoping for a piece of the profits flowing in from nutmeg, cloves, pepper, and silk. And the profits were staggering. A single successful voyage to the Spice Islands could return several times its original investment. Pepper that cost almost nothing in Indonesia sold in Europe for a fortune. By 1637, yes, the same year Amsterdam was gripped by an entirely different kind of madness we'll get to in the next video, the VOC was worth more, in today's terms, than Apple, Google, and Amazon combined. One company, one small country, more valuable than the biggest corporations on Earth today. All of this money had to go somewhere, and it went to Amsterdam. By the mid-1600s, Amsterdam wasn't just a trading port. It had become the financial capital of the entire world. The city built the first real stock exchange in history, where shares in the VOC were bought and sold every single day. Warehouses along the canals overflowed with goods from 4 continents. Silk from China, sugar from Brazil, furs from North America, spices from Indonesia. Bankers in Amsterdam were financing wars, kings, and entire foreign governments. If you needed a loan in the 1600s, whether facialized pliant Asian stand-age people who are all Vosgens the Hundreddeens, whether you were a merchant or a monarch, chances are you came to Amsterdam to get it. This flood of wealth changed the way people in the Republic lived. Merchant families, who a generation earlier had been simple traders, were now commissioning portraits from painters like Rembrandt and Vermeer. They built canal houses that still line Amsterdam today, and lived in a way that stunned visitors from the rest of Europe. Foreign travelers wrote home in disbelief, describing a country where even ordinary craftsmen ate white bread and owned paintings, luxuries reserved for nobility almost everywhere else on the continent. But this golden age had a dark and brutal underside. The same company that made Amsterdam rich also built forts, waged wars, and violently seized control of entire islands to enforce a monopoly on spices. On the Banda Islands, the VOC's pursuit of nutmeg led to the killing or enslavement of most of the local population, one of the most brutal chapters in the entire history of colonial trade. The Republic's wealth wasn't just built on clever trade routes and financial innovation. It was built, in large part, on colonial violence, forced labor, and the transatlantic slave trade, which the Dutch became deeply involved in through the West India Company. This is the uncomfortable truth behind almost every golden age in history. The glittering canal houses of Amsterdam were paid for, in part, by suffering thousands of miles away. Suffering that most people back home never saw and rarely thought about. Understanding the Dutch Golden Age means understanding both sides of that story. By the 1660s, the Republic's power reached its absolute peak. In 1667, in one of the most audacious naval raids in history, a Dutch fleet sailed straight up the River Thames into the heart of English territory. They destroyed a large part of the English Navy at anchor, practically in London's backyard. It remains, to this day, one of the most humiliating military defeats in British naval history. For a moment, it seemed like nothing could touch the Republic. But empires built purely on trade are fragile, before with luxury lent end of the imperation that armies are not. Empires built purely on trade are fragile in a way that empires built on land and armies are not. England and France, watching the Dutch grow wealthier and more powerful, began to see the Republic not as a trading partner, but as a threat to be broken. Trade wars turned into real wars. And a country that had built its wealth on being faster and smarter than everyone else started to fall behind. The Dutch Republic had pulled off something almost no small nation has ever managed before or since, turning trade, information, and financial innovation into more power than empires 10 times its size. But golden ages don't just end with wars and rival empires. Sometimes they nearly collapse from the inside, because of something far stranger. In 1637, while the VOC was worth more than the largest companies on Earth today, ordinary people in Amsterdam were about to lose their minds over a flower. A single tulip bulb would soon sell for more than a house on the most expensive canal in the city. That story, the madness that almost broke Amsterdam from within, is next. If you want to understand how an entire golden age nearly unraveled over a flower, subscribe. The story of tulip mania is coming next.